of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, it's not P, but the Trump tape has been released. He's discussing classified documents.
Wow, a shower of evidence against Donald Trump.
A
Drip, drip, drip. Gross.
golden shower for prosecutors, one might say.
Yes.
Supreme Court rejects the independent state legislative theory. Well, most of it anyways. In Harper v. Moore. Meanwhile, Senate panel finds intel failures by the FBI and DHS in the January 6th run-up. Supreme Court to hear a case that could block a wealth tax in the future. Meanwhile, also allows for Jim Jordan's greatest nightmare to proceed. U.S. government ODNI report quashes at least part of the COVID lab leak theory. And Prigozhin says he's all good with Putin now, as Putin announces a deal with Prigozhin. Texas passes a law that will overturn mandated water breaks for construction workers, among other protections. Fake pregnancy center sued in Massachusetts for failing to diagnose an ectopic pregnancy and prescribed the needed abortion. The Delaware House is to consider today giving corporations literally the right to vote. New York City congestion pricing plan gets federal approval. Did Marjorie Taylor Greene get bounced from the Freedom Caucus? Isn't that censorship? Club Q killer takes a plea deal. Biden administration releases distribution of broadband funding. Going to have high speed all around the country within 10 years because of that infrastructure bill. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I'm getting a lot of the whole golden shower thing.
It grosses people out.
It grosses people out, and also long-time listeners of this program, folks who went back and saw back in the days pilot season and Who's the Caboose, know that's a it's a long-running joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And apparently somebody just said, Timothy just said, if Sam makes one more golden shower joke, I'm retracting my membership. I watched his old debate with Charlie Kirk yesterday. I'm starting to think Sam has a thing for it. I think I may have said it in that debate, too.
Why? How did that come up? How did golden showers?
To be totally honest, I don't remember. It may have been something to the effect of I just remember when my character in this show was describing something that was really good, and it's like there's a real opportunity. It's like a field of gold. It's like a shower, like a gold. And
right.
That was.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Well, it is Newsday Tuesday.
It is Newsday Tuesday, folks. We've got a lot to get to, and I have to say, I should just announce that I am now the parent of a graduate.
High school graduate.
I still have one kid who has yet to graduate elementary school. I got a bit of a gap, but I have a high school graduate. So thank you for all the thank yous on that. And congratulations. But I had to leave early yesterday, and Emma was nice enough to wait till we could really get into the Tim Pool debate that you had. And so we're going to do that today in the fun half. So I wanted to thank you for
have
that.
to be there for that because it would be a little redundant for me to go over what I said or whatever. I need your additions.
A lot of people do that. I mean, a lot of people do that. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it is the amount of appreciation I have to sort of expose Tim. I mean, you really...
a hit dog will holler.
A hit dog will definitely holler, and he has been really upset about... He's upset about your skate park maligning and et cetera, et cetera. We'll get into that stuff, but...
all the substantive things.
I will say this. I heard from a lot of people, particularly over the weekend, but for some reason, I think Monday, people get back into it, a lot of people. And the number of people who I was actually surprised. Like, I'm not, in the main, I don't have conservative friends. Because over at one point, like, it ends up, things get too contentious. But I do have, I'm not out of touch with some of those people.
Right.
Let's put it this way. And I don't speak out of turn, so I would never name names. But I heard from people who I was very surprised to hear from, who I rarely hear from, to be honest with you, that they felt like you filleted him.
Oh,
in such a
really?
way. Yes.
Oh, that's good to know.
In fact, that is the word fillet is a quote.
All right. Well, I'm happy to
other
hear
people
that.
had other things to say but that was the...
Tim Pool's dad thought you did a good job and that you should take over the show.
I saw that.
So,
Yes.
Yeah. You didn't like that part. Well, look,
I saw that video. I mean, I'm talking about people who contacted me back channel, but
I have an ally
I
in
did
the
see
coup.
that video of Tim Pool's dad say that you should have your own show, and okay.
the coup is building force.
yeah, I mean, thank you for that piece of ammunition, Tim Pool's dad, and also for the praise of how well you thought I did versus your son.
It's like France during the Revolutionary War.
J26 is going to be a problem going forward too. All right, well, let's get into this. As you know, Donald Trump is facing. He's got 3 indictments right now. Is that right? Is it 2? I believe it's 2. One in the city. He's got a 3rd coming up in August in Georgia that I think it's reasonable to anticipate based upon what the Georgia prosecutor's been talking about. This case, in terms of his stolen documents, completely of his own making. Yeah. I mean, in that he had multiple occasions in which to avoid all of this. Refused for whatever reason. It's unclear. And the judge has set an early date of August 14th for this case to proceed. Nobody thinks it's actually going to, but that is basically more of like a floor as opposed to a ceiling. And so it will not start before August 14th. The prosecutors the other day are aiming closer to December of this year. And it remains to be seen whether he's able to stall. But there's just so much evidence here, and it really is about obstruction, but it's also about whether he knew that he had these documents, which at various times, I mean, it's one thing to say on a TV show, I sort of lied about saying that I had them because it's TV. Yeah. But there's increasingly more evidence that he knew that he had them and that he knew that they were not declassified. He has claimed
that's his major defense, right? Is that he is trying to say that he declassified them as president before he left.
Yeah, and it turns out that he, at least contemporaneous of when he had these documents, did not. But you also get a sense of why he was doing it. This is we heard about this tape before, but here is the actual tape. This is really
from 2021.
Yep. And maybe we'll just, I don't think we need to say Trump, but I'll say it's a staffer when it's a staffer. I think people recognize Trump's voice.
Bad, sick people.
That was
staffer.
their coup,
but against you.
Well, it started right at the
like
beginning.
when Millie's talking about, oh, you were going to try to accuse. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in. That's right, trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Millie, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some.
That was the writer.
This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential.
Yeah.
All right, pause it for 1 second. I don't want to go back for that. But this is what I think, it's becoming clear as to why he kept these documents. I had a conversation with, I think it was Julian, who's the CNN, we've had him on a couple of times, the historian.
Zelizer?
Yeah.
Zelizer?
Julian Zelizer went into a meeting with a bunch of other historians with Trump, and Trump was trying, and this was a couple of years ago, I think they've written a book on it maybe even, or certainly an article, and Trump is like selling all the historians on the way that they're going to like talk of his administration.
Right.
And it's quite clear here that he's keeping these documents, at least in part, again, because if he knew what he had and was going to monetize these things, he could have just photocopied them. People don't need the original documents.
Yeah.
But this is him slowly going through these things, like almost like, I had my first grade papers in my parents' attic, and I'm just going through to look back on my life and see what was there. And this is him going back so that he can spend the next couple of years setting the story straight.
Yeah.
It was all them.
It's like baseball cards or something like that. Or, this is a really rare one that proves this smear against me, except it's more personal. It's like, when you wish that you could go back and like have documentation about something that happened in your life to prove a point. He is fixated on that from like a macro perspective about the presidency.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I understand that.
I can understand why I would do that, particularly if you were of his mentality, which is, I think, shaky.
That's why Nixon recorded everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But go back. The problem is for him here is that he is openly admitting that I'm not supposed to have these papers, sort of.
Right.
Do we understand like the connection he's making between the coup against him, like before he gets into office, and this Iraq thing where he's Iran thing?
Yeah.
Oh no. Those are completely unrelated.
Right.
They're completely unrelated. He's trying to argue that the deep state was out to get him from day one, and that every bad thing that was attributed to him in the news during those years was somebody else.
Right, that he didn't really want to invade Iran, even though
it wasn't me.
He assassinated a top general, Soleimani, and that was clear. That could have been if Iran didn't show restraint, a war between us and Iran. Thank God that wasn't the case. But that was Trump.
The idea wasn't even fine, but the actual. Yeah. I was the one who pressed the button.
Yeah, right.
So the accuracy is me, but all right, here we go.
This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
He's trying to make it seem like he hadn't set this up for the writer.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case,
What case?
Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time.
That's a staffer.
No, she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert. By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it. And he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me.
So the connection here is there's this New Yorker article, July 15, 2021 by Susan Glazer, and it goes into the last time that Milley spoke with Trump, and he said basically there are two nightmare scenarios for the period after November 3rd. One would be that Trump would call on the military to domestically keep it in power, or the other one would be that he would provoke an external crisis with Iran. And Milley alleged that. So what Trump is saying is, we have documents here that the Pentagon wanted to strike Iran itself, and
honestly, that's kind of helpful information to know.
Well, no, because look, of course, there is a document, there is a packet in the Pentagon on attacking every country in the world. I would be shocked if we did not have a plan to attack Canada. I mean, like everywhere.
Good point.
That is what's happening there. And so Trump takes these things as evidence. That's different than Trump saying, like, let's do it. Pull out what you have and let's do it. Like, but even it, like, I mean, that back and forth almost doesn't matter in the context, at least of what Trump is dealing with. You know, it is highly unlikely that the U.S. doesn't have multiple plans on how to attack Iran,
and that are
with various proxies,
and that are generally like desired by people in decision-making context. And Trump, the idea that Trump would know about that and then basically look at them as insurance, and his knowledge of them as insurance.
And it's trying to inoculate him against media reports, as opposed to what I've seen some of the defense has been, is that, like, oh, he's akin to a whistleblower or something. He was not. This would be a different thing if he was like, look at all the things the deep state are doing. They want to attack X, Y, and Z. First of all, it's undercut by the fact that he did assassinate Soleimani, so he's not some dove on Iran. And two, like, he was hoarding them for personal gain. He was not trying to
expose that we have a plan to attack Iran. Of course we have a plan to attack Iran. Of course we do. I mean, I am quite convinced we have a plan to attack, the top 50 countries also, in the world.
He can't be a whistleblower if we haven't seen these documents.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Oh, no, I only give them out to people who are writing possible profiles on me or profiles of people around me. So
I'm getting ready to blow the whistle, but just wait. Okay.
I'm ready for the right time. Yeah, when they start to pound those war drums, that's when I swoop in. But then they can't help themselves. They're still obsessed with Clinton.
Yeah.
Remember, this is like a year ago, essentially, that this happened. Yeah. Oh, she would send emails to Wiener.
But that admission is under Hillary, like, ha ha ha, this is like Hillary. They're admitting that this is a handling of classified material that is outside the norm in a joking manner.
That they were calling for her to be locked up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
She sent it to Anthony Weiner.
Yeah.
The pervert. By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it, and he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
declassify.
Figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified.
Yeah.
Now I can't. But this is
classified. Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Just to be clear what happened here. I mean, I don't know how more explicit you can get. He says, so what he's saying to his staffer is like, do you think we can because they want to slide these papers to the writer so that the writer then writes the story. It was Milley's idea, not Trump's idea.
Yeah.
And of course, Trump is such an idiot that he doesn't understand that, like, any writer who has any awareness of this knows that these exist here, that they have plans to attack every country. It's the civilian leadership that says, pull those out of the filing cabinet. Let's take a look at those. And so he is saying, do you think we can, to a staffer? And she's saying, well, we got a little bit of a problem. Go a little forward here. A little bit of a problem. And he goes, see, I when I was president, I could have classified it, but I didn't.
Right.
And she said, now we got a problem. And It's like literally admitting the whole dynamic, like
on tape. I mean, I don't know if it's a smoking gun, but it's pretty damn close.
How intense do you think the rush to getting to the boss's desk at the DOJ is there to be the one who litigates this case and tries to prove that he didn't declassify these documents? Are like they're all like thinking we're gonna get a huge win here. But all right, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to say, like, the actual smoking gun tape was a lot less clear than this. It was things
yeah.
Nixon saying, like, when you open that scab, it opens up a lot of things.
Right.
This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify.
figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified
Yeah.
it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so, look, here I have, and you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
It's
you.
incredible,
That's the writer.
right?
No,
Hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
He ends it with some
He
Cokes
loves-
bringing
he
in.
loves
So
Coke.
understand what he did here, and he thought he was so intelligent about this whole thing. They had the documents here. He knew one of the things he wanted to sell this writer on was the idea that he wasn't going to be the guy who was going to attack Iran. It was Milley. And he just like, I'm just looking at my paper. They're like, yeah, this one I just found. Just have this one. And is there any way that we can maybe, we got a problem. We got a problem. But maybe this would have been the proof. But now you've seen it. Now you know. I didn't, now you know. I didn't.
Yeah.
This is why he is, in his other life, he really just is a PR executive who got a little bit too big for his britches and became like the Republican president. Because this is probably what he did with Trump, like his properties and things. He'd have reporters in and he'd glad hand and bring in some Cokes and he'd show them a little something to get on their side, a bit of a limited hangout for his own purposes. But except this time he's just doing it with like highly classified information about war.
He doesn't deny the part that Milley said, like, in addition to the Iran gambit, that he wanted the military to step in to help him maintain power domestically.
Well, yes, right.
Samsberger saying those aren't staffers. That's the ghostwriters from Meadows' book. No, there's a staffer in there, and she's the voice you hear the most. But at the end, it is the ghostwriters who said, like, you wouldn't have believed me. And the writer says, no, I believed you. And Trump says, it's incredible, right? And the writer says, no, they never met a war they didn't want, because as a writer there, you want to get into the
right,
to
you
the
got to
zone.
butter
But,
him up.
I mean, this is, again, the real issue is going to be, can Donald Trump push this case deep into 2024? That's the only question.
Yes. And right now, I guess it's supposedly December is the target date, but he could probably push that back. And there was a story from yesterday that he has quietly changed the language on his website for political donations. It used to be 99 cents going to his reelection effort, 1% to his PAC. And now it's 90 to 10%. And that's apparently the speculation is that he's trying to get all that money into his PAC for his legal bills. So he has an incentive, even if he thinks he can't win, to keep running, because the more he runs, the more donations he gets getting funneled into his PAC, where he can pay his actual legal bills.
Oh, and also the more he runs, the harder it is to maintain the case. Like, at what point does are they going to prosecute him through the entire campaign onto election day? I mean, are they're going to appeal if he gets, maybe he gets fast tracked before the election, but what happens when you start getting into primary season?
I know.
December, you've already done a couple of Republican primaries. And then, the
hush money case
goes
is in
on.
March. It's after Super Tuesday. I would hope that this case gets, to be honest, that would be ideal if it all comes crashing down in March and Trump's already has like a significant lead in the primary. I don't know, but
this is going to be crazy.
It's unprecedented.
This is going to be crazy. All right, let's just cover a couple of Supreme Court issues. There is, just before we came on air, the court ruled on Moore v. Harper. This was a This was a case that had to do with North Carolina, and it was the so-called independent state legislature theory that a lot of people were worried about because it would have, among other things, there's a lot of other things that are associated with this, but one of the things like sort of like directly in play is it would have allowed the legislature to change the way that electors in the Electoral College are chosen even after an election. In other words, it's basically saying like there can't be any type of interference from the courts or anything like that, even a state court. This is the theory they were trying to push. And so a Republican-controlled legislature could do whatever it wanted after the fact, even after a vote. That was really the implications of it, narrowly tailored. This case was essentially, well, they lost the case, but I'm seeing different people sort of like assess it in different ways. Let's do Rick Pildes first. He is an election law expert, and he says that the court has provided some clarity about this issue. State constitutions continue to bind state legislators, but it also left a vague standard hanging over the 2024 elections. The Constitution prohibits state courts from transgressing the ordinary bounds of judicial review when they interpret state constitutions or even statutes. The court, however, is making it clear that it's not providing any standard at all. It's not even an attempt at a standard as to what this means in a concrete fashion. In the midst of those elections, so we get a clear definition of the boundaries on the federal constraint in this decision recognizes on state court making. So he's convinced this is still going to be litigated. But there, at the very least, there's sort of like a outward bound cap that the Supreme Court has put on in terms of what the legislature can do. But they can still get up involved in some really nasty stuff. And I think it remains to be seen. In the coming weeks, we'll have somebody on when people have had time to digest this ruling. But for now, it is not the worst case scenario.
No. Basically, I think where the gray area lies is that it does not provide the standard, as you say, but it preserves the jurisdiction of state courts and governors' offices over these kinds of election laws. So it's not just purely the state legislature being able to make these determinations unchecked. It can still be bandied about in the courts and with like the governor's input, I guess. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the election laws that come out of this are going to be good, but it preserves a semblance of checks and balances that could have been done away with, like based on the most extreme interpretation of this independent state legislature thing.
Now, we still have some cases that are extant from the court that we're going to hear really within the next week or not even two, I would imagine, a week, and I'm going to miss them. And so when we get back, I'm going to have a couple more catch up. But the affirmative action case still is extant. That's whether colleges and universities can continue to take race as a consideration, as a factor in admissions. There's a like a Colorado, wedding cake type of case in there.
That graphic designer,
but in this instance, graphic designers. We've had more v. Harper has come out. Biden student loan program. We've yet to hear from the court on that. That's going to come down shortly. And we'll see after that. There's a couple others. There's like a mail carrier case that wants to sue the U.S. Postal Service because it failed to accommodate his request not to work on Sundays. There's, and I think that's those are the biggies that we're waiting on. And we'll, when I get back from my my road trip with my kids, we're going to see a bunch of stuff.
That'll be fun.
There are also other cases that are going to be on the docket next year that are of import. One is, and this gets into the weeds quite a bit, but there was if folks remember, for many, many, many years, I mean, this went back even in 2004, profits made abroad by U.S. companies were kept off of U.S. shores because they did not want to be subject to a tax, and they were waiting for a Republican to come in to essentially give a repatriation tax that was cheaper than the actual tax. So George Bush did this in 2005, I think it was, under the American Jobs Creation Act. This happened again in 2017 under the Trump years. And essentially what it was, and just a reminder, Eisenhower allowed deferral of money coming back. Instead of having to be taxed in that year, if you were an American corporation, you were making money overseas, he allowed for deferral to encourage investment and build up the rest of the world in the wake of World War II. This was a tax break, essentially. And over the years, it got morphed into a tax penalty to bring the money back and get taxed on it. So when the repatriation happens, it's a one-time tax. And there was this couple that owned like 10% of an Indian company. During that repatriation situation, they had to pay taxes on it. They're bringing this suit, a lot of people suspect, not just for that, but to inhibit the ability of the U.S. government to impose a wealth tax. We'll talk more about this in the future, but this is pretty important to keep in mind. The name of the case is Moore versus United States, not to be confused with Harper v. Moore. So keep an eye on that. The other one, this one is a case that we've talked about in the past. On Monday, that's yesterday, Supreme Court allowed for a decision to allow 230 men to sue Ohio State University. This is over a decades-old sexual abuse cases that happened by a university doctor. The guy is dead, Richard Strauss. I think this had to do with going over a statute of limitations. But the question was when the statute of limitations sort of like kicks in, based upon when they understood, these wrestlers understood that they had been abused.
And like Ohio State's been trying to get this case dismissed, and luckily it failed.
Strauss worked at the school from 78 to 98. The plaintiffs say the university officials failed to stop him despite complaints raised as early as the late 1970s. Many of them allege Strauss abused them during required physicals or other medical exams at campus athletic facilities, a student health center, and his home and campus clinic. Strauss killed himself in 2005. In 2018, the university announced an investigation. It has apologized to its victims and reached over $60 million in settlements with at least 296 people. But the university eventually sought to have the remaining unsettled cases dismissed, arguing that the time limit for the claims had passed. Lower court found that the statute of limitations kicked in later than it did. This is a dynamic that's happening around the country with cases where we're allowing abuse cases to take place either because statutes are not kicked in until people understand that they had been abused, or legislatively, like in New York, where there's a window now. If you understand that you had been abused as a child, you could come back. This story is important, but it has like broader political implications, particularly because of this clip. The members of that the various wrestling teams that in particular have a lot of claims against the university for not doing anything about this doctor. Their claims are founded in having told various Ohio State officials that they had been subject to ongoing sexual harassment and abuse. And one of those officials was an assistant coach to the wrestling team, a guy named Jim Jordan. If that name sounds familiar, it should. He is, I think, the ranking guy on the Judiciary Committee.
He's the chairman.
Yeah.
He's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
As well as the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government.
Yeah. And Jim Jordan knows this is out there. And we talked about it a couple years ago because of this testimony in front of the Ohio House, I think it was the Ohio House Justice Committee, Civil Justice Committee, looking for a statutory relief on the statute of limitations. And here is one of the victims, the coach of the team, or I should say the captain of the team, talking about how Jim Jordan begged him to drop his case because it was going to hurt his political fortunes. Listen to this.
This is disgusting. You people have the power to do something. Ohio State is too arrogant. They think it's going to go away. Jim Jordan called me crying, groveling on the 4th of July, begging me to go against my brother. Begging me, crying for a half hour. That's the kind of cover-ups that's going on there. Now, you guys can sit and act like it's not going on, but I got a lot of other stuff here. Emails that were taken out of my mailbox. That's a crime.
He's talking about the cover-up that he claims Ohio State and people like Jim Jordan were engaged in when student athletes went to him and said, this is going on, and he did nothing about it. More than nothing. And now, 10, 20, 30 years later, I guess, 30, 40 years later, he's calling these victims and saying, please, please don't pursue this. Or contradict the testimony of your fellow teammates. There are others. I mean, I remember when we covered this 2 or 3 years ago. Now, I don't know why it didn't get much coverage on the news. Maybe it did get some, but I mean, this is unbelievable.
He was an assistant for 7 years at Ohio State, an assistant coach from 87 until 1995. And it seems like discovery is going to be pretty unfortunate for Jim Jordan because there are multiple wrestlers, I think even referees, who told Jordan at the time. So it's not just him calling this victim and saying, go against your family because I could potentially be implicated. He's crying because he knows that there's probably something to hide in this instance for Jordan. Yeah. It's not just like guilty by association. It appears that based on the allegations, at least, Jordan was active in the cover-up.
Oh, without, I mean,
I just want to make that clear.
Right. There was multiple, I remember there was multiple other people who said, I went to Jim Jordan. He just looked at me like with a blank stare and did nothing. And the idea that his party, this is one of the, I don't know, top 4 or 5 Republicans in the country in terms of like leadership. His party is running on a groomer ticket.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who was the last Ohio wrestling coach Republican that people talked about? Was Denny Hastert. And he was the Speaker of the House in the last half of the first decade of this century. And after his stint as Speaker of the House, I think he spent some time in jail for accusations of child molestation, of wrestling, of his wrestling athletes.
It's not always projection. Some people are just hateful, but it's often projection.
Yeah. So, Jim Jordan's not having a good day today, incidentally. So if he seems a little cranky, you'll know why.
Yeah, he should return to Tim Pool's show and talk about it.
Did he go on Tim Pool's show?
Yeah, 4 months ago.
Huh. I'm sure Tim Pool's all over that.
The grooming thing?
They were talking about the weaponization of the internet. I don't think they got to him covering up sexual abuse.
You know.
That's weird. It's weird.
People have time limits.
That's super weird. I'm really surprised by that because that guy really wants to get to the bottom.
He gets red-faced about a lot of things.
Yep. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Let's talk about this while we're at it. The COVID lab leak theory that was all over the place.
Yeah, it's not debunked, but there was this on Friday, kind of a news dump, which, you bury news on Friday. The government's long-awaited report came out about this, and
I'm sorry, Hastert was from Illinois. I said
okay.
Ohio.
Okay.
I always do that.
Oh, gotcha.
Apologies.
No, it's fine. But I just think we should highlight this COVID lab leak thing, not because, well, really because to counteract the fact that every time there's a story that comes out where there's speculation about the lab leak theory, it gets so much circulation. Like, this is an open-ended question. COVID could have been leaked from the Wuhan lab. And honestly, the impulse inherent in it, is that there is like this rabid desire to be as hawkish and militant against China as humanly possible. And it gets circulated. And then on Friday, classified documents, a long multi-year report comes out from the Biden administration. And they say, oh, it's still possible, the lab leak theory, but all the evidence embedded in the report indicates it's quite unlikely. And that doesn't get circulated in the same way.
This was the COVID-19 Origin Act. It was signed into law by Biden in March. It required the intelligence community to classify all information on the topic in possession. And like Emma says, it does not address the merits of the two most likely pandemic origins, which is one, that it came from an animal and somehow got passed over to humans, could have been in that wet market, whatnot, or that it was somehow involved in the Wuhan Institute. It doesn't argue the merits of that. It just talks about how much actual evidence exists. And they say both hypotheses remain plausible. I'm sure you could come up with a third or fourth hypotheses that could also remain plausible in some way. But there is no evidence that any work at that research facility involved SARS-CoV-2, a close progenitor or backbone virus that is closely related enough to have been the source of the pandemic. There's no evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
It also says, in terms of those people who were sick, their symptoms were, quote, consistent with, but not diagnostic of COVID-19, and could have been caused by a number of diseases, quote, were not consistent with COVID-19, some of the symptoms. Indeed, it says that while several WIV researchers felt mildly ill in fall of 2019, they experienced symptoms consistent with colds or allergies. I think the actual guy himself, too, has said, I did not have COVID. But we're specifically talking about the evidence from the U.S. government. And the whole point of this is that you had a lot of media outlets, including ProPublica, run with this story about the FBI having what they called low confidence theory about the Wuhan lab leak. And the whole point of a low confidence theory is that they have low confidence in it,
Yeah.
that it's plausible. It may be possible, but certainly not probable. So it's somewhere between plausible and possible, maybe just plausible, which means that it could have happened, but there's no evidence whatsoever that it did. And why is this important? I mean, it's important because and frankly, like, when we would talk about this and hear this, back in 2020, as we were saying, like, well, it really doesn't make a material difference, particularly now.
Yeah.
Going forward, would it make a material difference? Yes. They had rolled back all sorts of apparatus that the U.S. government had to monitor pandemics in China. And also, we used to have it as a position as a member of the cabinet, or would sit in like the expanded cabinet. But the point of not going around and espousing a theory that has no evidence and just speculation, Atrios, as he often does, sort of sums this stuff up quite concisely. He had a post today about this, actually, entitled "The Smartest Boys on the Internet." The quote, lab leak theory was promoted by the usual centrist dipshits because they believed wokeness had taken control of the entire public health epidemiology science community, and because the people who annoy them on Twitter, in parens by telling them they are wrong because they are, couldn't possibly be right. We can all be confidently wrong for dumb reasons, but centrist dipshits, much more than conservatives, because conservatives usually have no idea what the left is actually thinking about anything, are constantly confidently wrong because the hippie girl in college rejected them and she can't possibly be right about anything. Now, I would also say these centrist dipshits are not just the Nate Silvers and the Iglesiases and the whatever writers at the Atlantic Monthly, but also those people who try and stride and claim that they were formerly of the left and the left left them, and that wokeness is a problem and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the last paragraph that Atrios writes, I think, is the perhaps the most important one. Slightly more seriously, that the left must be wrong is a bedrock assumption of the discourse on every subject. Opposition to the lab leak theory was branded woke because people were pointing out correctly that promoting the idea was contributing to a right-wing racist scapegoating campaign with worrying consequences for Asians and Asian Americans, and therefore probably shouldn't be just asserted as true based on vibes.
Well said.
Atrios doesn't miss.
Never.
Honestly, there's no better way to put that. Were there substantial evidence? But like, it's, we're not sitting in bars shooting the shit. And this goes for, all those dipshits like Rogan and all the other ones. You're not in a bar shooting the shit with your buddy. You're broadcasting to hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of people. And it's going to have implications for other people. So it's one thing to sit there and, speculate with your buddies in a bar. But just because you're being paid hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, or millions or hundreds of millions of dollars does not give you the license to go and fundamentally make people's lives more miserable because you want some interesting content for your stupid ass podcast.
And it's so funny too that those types, particularly the Rogan types, are conspiratorial about the deep state or whatever, and yet they do not apply any level of scrutiny to things like this, where there is an incentive for hawkishness within powers that be in Washington that might be inflating the concept of the lab leak theory just to drum up that kind of sentiment. I mean, even in the report, they felt the need to have to kind of cover their bases and say it's still plausible, but there's the evidence that then comes afterwards is all related to the zoonosis theory, which is like essentially the consensus among all experts in this field. And so that is why it's just so funny that they try to brand themselves as in some way like kind of unorthodox thinkers when they're falling for the same trap that traditional centrist corporate media types have fallen for decades.
Including like, this is the Charles Murray playbook all over again, where we had to act like this guy wasn't a think tank gremlin propagandist, but was an actual scientist. It's like, it's you see this all everywhere now. Pediatricians are woke because they accept trans care. The American Library Association is woke because it accepts certain books. Epidemiologists are woke because of COVID and certain like institutes or concerns of equity with regards to that. And ultimately, like, we're going to hear this, like, it's woke to believe in climate science too. I mean, Schellenberger's already like one of those guys. So
without a doubt. And the bottom line is you just need to if you're making public pronouncements and public speculation about things, you have to weigh the downside of your speculation. You're not Joe Rogan's not pushing the conversation forward on this. It's a question of whether or not people who are positioned to get evidence on this, those are the only people who are pushing the question forward. The rest is just throwing it out there and allowing, the chips to fall where they may. It's not in any way moving the ball forward or increasing the public's knowledge about anything.
It's simulating that for their own views.
Exactly.
Yeah. There has never been substantial public evidence of a lab leak. And yet, I think if you were to ask the general public about the origins of COVID, there would be way too many people who think it's from a lab leak.
China.
Yeah. I mean, that and
directly
frankly
plays into like hawkery.
I mean, I've been trying to say this. Thankfully, the Biden administration seems to have cooled down the tensions for a bit with that Blinken visit in China. But for a while, it's just something to monitor, like this drumbeat that continues to.
I mean, it's
bang.
crazy. David and I, we looked at Trump last week when he was talking to what's his name, the Lego-looking guy from Fox News, Brett Baer.
Okay.
And he said, check out Truth the Vote. You go to Truth the Vote. It's China hawkery. It's the Democrats. We can't trust the election results. And why? Because the Communist Party of China. And look at this thing Pelosi said nice about him. Look at this thing Biden said nice about him. And that's why Trump lost. Like, you actually... like, that's really... We've gone beyond, like, the crazy QAnon stuff. Trump is saying, like, it's their closeness with China. So, like,
we're back to Red Scare. And the idea that Pelosi is soft on China is hilarious. She just took that completely ill-advised trip to Taiwan to drum up tensions. But it's just something that's why I wanted to play that Jesse Waters clip after you left yesterday of him doing man on the street and making fun of people in Chinatown on the O'Reilly factor. Yeah. And because
I remember that.
Let's be clear, Jesse Waters with the 8 p.m. slot, you think that he's not going to lean into anti-Asian racism on his program and China hawkery is not going to be one of the new frontiers of the right in this way? I mean, look out for it.
Of course.
It's scary for Asian Americans in this country. And then, of course, obviously the militarism that could follow.
Let's take a break, head into the fun half. We got a lot of stuff to cover in the fun half. We're going to go over a bunch of the Tim Pool stuff. And also we will talk a little bit about Jesse Waters. He's the latest bigot in the 8 p.m. slot. Of course, this is sort of like what's old is new again. Going back to the Bill O'Reilly, this is where he got his training from Bill O'Reilly. I think he was on the Bill O'Reilly show. Went to the same college as Tucker, so has the same sort of like frat boy pedigree.
A fancy lad.
From Trinity College, as it were. Has the same affectations of Bill O'Reilly. No word as to whether Bill O'Reilly is going to sue him for his cadence.
Potentially just as creepy with women. I remind people that he told us that story about letting out the air in his current wife's tires when she was a Fox News intern in order to get her to hang around and need him for a ride home.
Well, if you're going to sexually harass somebody, maybe like at least he did the right thing by marrying her. That's, I guess.
There you go.
That's the They got to be clear on that.
Good job, Sam.
Yes.
No, I was just joking around. Yeah, I don't know. Just saying you're doing your due diligence on that.
Yeah. Because that's what he did, right? I mean, if you're going to
yes.
Now we've committed.
Yes,
Way to trap a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truly trapper.
Yeah. Well, is it really kidnapping if it's really just an engagement?
Is your tire flat? Well, it's pretty scary out there in those New York streets. You might probably want to ride home.
Did you drop this engagement ring on the sidewalk on the concrete?
Yeah. He had to admit to it. He had to keep the engagement long so that the statute of limitations would run out, so he could talk about it at his wedding.
Yeah.
Let's take a
meet cute.
Let's take a quick
meet
break.
Kidnap.
The number is 646-257-3920. Oh, yeah, that's right. Shout out to Ryan Grimm for punching Jesse Waters back in the day.
We did that yesterday, too.
Oh, you did?
We did
that was
allude to it, at
that
least.
Was nice. We're going to take a quick break. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, but you get the free half free of commercials. Now, we didn't have any commercials today, because, we're still sort of like recovering. Hopefully won't take that long, but it'll be months, where we're recovering from the ad injection, dynamic advertising stuff that we're just not suited for, because of the nature of our show. We switched advertising brokers. It's going to take a while to ramp back up, but it is our members' support that keeps this show chugging along. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. And you get little perks like you can IM the show via our free app. The app is free to everybody. It's functional, a lot of great functions for everybody. But one function you get when you're a member is you can IM the show, and you can search our entire archive. That's at majorityapp.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Emma.
Yes.
ESVN, what's up?
Yesterday we talked about some of the NBA trades happening, or that have happened. We also touched on how the NHL completely caved to right-wing pressure, banned their Pride jerseys, which had been raising money for the LGBTQ community. Another reason that league is just completely behind the times. And then Bradley and I had a ton of fun doing way too early NFL over-unders. I mean, I'm getting excited for the NFL season in June. I know. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, it's just fun. I mean, I'm already excited
fun,
for football season is... I'm a whole different animal in that time period.
Glancing anxiously at my wallet. It's just fun.
I was good. I didn't bet on I only bet on one NHL Finals game. I didn't bet on the NBA Finals at all. I just enjoyed.
You got to brag that you're not betting on things. If there's a checklist, I'm quite sure that's one of them.
I'm actually a year sober, except for game 2.
Yeah, we don't count it. Anyway.
Tonight on Left Reckoning, we'll not be talking about any sort of gambling talk, but we're talking to Yasha Levine about Russia, the Wagner sort of mutiny stunt, and how you can understand it both as a proxy war and an unjust invasion. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, and some other stuff. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this break. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501457. 238. 56, 27, 1/2, 5 eighths, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million.